Ayesha, how did you find carnivore?
Well, first of all, Dave, I just want to say thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be able to share my story. So my journey to find carnivore, as many of your guests started with keto. I started gaining weight. I was a really thin child. I was active. I was a swimmer, and I started gaining weight around puberty and noticing around high school that I was just putting on weight, a lot of weight in my midsection and my chest. And so I actually first started keto at 16 years old, which is what it's like 17 years ago. So yeah, we didn't really call it keto then. I guess it was Atkins or whatever. My dad's always been really into sort of niche nutrition and activity things, and so he told me, he was like, all you need to do is just eat meat and cheese and you're going to be great. And I was like, that's crazy. There's no way that eating meat and cheese is going to help me lose weight. But lo and behold, it did. But, being a teenager and having relationships and friendships, socially, it was just sort of hard to stick to that. I ended up, going back to carbs. um, I also, around that time, realized that I was having really irregular and heavy cycles. And I started growing black hairs around my chin and on my upper lip and around my belly. Um, and I, and towards like the beginning of my 20s, I was gaining more weight. And so, and I tried many diets over the years. I tried paleo, I was a pescatarian, I was vegan for about a year and a half. I did juice cleanses, I did Whole 30. I mean, you name it, I tried it. And things worked. I mean, calorie restriction worked, but I would always end up not being able to stick to the counting. I've always been very bad at moderation. So, I'd see people be able to have an Oreo or just a small piece of cake or just a slice of bread and be fine. And they were good. For me, it was like a compulsion. If it was sugary or starchy, I would just overeat it without even realizing it. I mean, I could eat. I remember in college, I mean, I lived off of ramen noodles and Domino's pizza. I mean, I would get a Domino's pizza and I'd just eat the whole thing. If not that night, I'd finish it the next day. So, carbs were just something, it seemed like there was no end to how much I could eat. So, with the weight gain and, with the regular cycles, I, saw my OBGYN because I had sort of heard about PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, but I had never, gotten an official diagnosis. I kind of suspected I might have it. My mom had the polycystic ovaries, but not the disorder, not the syndrome. So when I was 25 in 2017, I was able to get that official diagnosis of PCOS. And for people who don't know what it is, it's a pretty common disorder with women. And essentially, it's, your ovaries are not working properly. You end up, uh, making extra androgens, which are typically male hormones. And so that's what causes a lot of the hair growth and the weight gain. What I didn't know at the time was that the underlying mechanism of PCOS is actually insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia. So that is something that I didn't understand at the time. I thought, when I was first diagnosed, that it was the many cysts that are created in the ovaries that cause the hyperandrogenism and all the things that go along with that. So I really, that's what I, that was my understanding of the syndrome. I didn't understand, um, the whole insulin resistance part of it. So they told me at the time that I would definitely have a difficulty conceiving. They told me that I should eat a whole food, high fiber diet, and that I should definitely work on losing weight because that can help some of the symptoms. Again, not understanding that the insulin resistance was part of that. And so I wasn't really concerned about the conceiving because at the time, I didn't even think I wanted children. So I was just like, I just worry about the weight. Right. So I did try keto on and off, again, because I remembered that it worked for me, when I was younger. But I always plateaued. So I would lose 10 or 15 pounds, 20 at the most, and then I would hit a plateau. And I was, again, not good at counting, not not that I couldn't do it, but I just wasn't consistent. And so I would, not eat carbs, but I was just eating a lot, and I would eat, I'd be eating my meat and cheese at 9:30 at night, and then I got into the sort of the dirty keto trap, right? So I'm like, ooh, these tortillas are only, one net carb. I can have like five of them, and this marshmallow stuff is it's mostly collagen, it's probably fine, but it was also full of fake sugar that made me really sick to my stomach. And it was all those sort of dirty keto foods that would always get me off the wrong track, because really I ended up eating carbs again, even though I was maybe staying under 50 carbs and maybe under 20 net carbs. I still was eating carbs, and I was eating the things that triggered my desire to overeat carbs and sugar. And that's just sort of part of PCOS. I mean, because of the insulin resistance, you start eating that sugar, you start eating those carbs, and you just want more. And your body just tells you you're still hungry, even when you're not. And so I wasn't fully understanding that, but all I knew is, oh, if I do keto, I lose weight. That's all I knew. But I would always fall off of it and go back to my cookies and gain weight again. And so fast forward sort of to my first pregnancy, which was 21, 22. As I suspected, I had trouble conceiving. So we tried naturally for almost a year, and it didn't happen. And so then I had to use some fertility treatments to help me ovulate, because part of what happens with PCOS is you don't ovulate normally. You get these really big cysts in your ovaries, which are supposed to turn into eggs. You have a lot of them, but none of them mature enough to have an egg, release it, and definitely not on a regular cycle. So that's part of what happens. So the drugs sort of help you, release an egg, and they help you to conceive. So we did manage to get pregnant from that. And but it was weird. At the beginning of my pregnancy, I was very, very anxious. I spent the first few months of my pregnancy I just was full of anxiety. And I talked to my OBGYN a few times about how, like, I just really feel like something bad is going to happen. And I kept telling her, like, all these people in my life have had these pregnancy complications, and I'm just really worried that something bad's going to happen. And she's like, you need, you just need to focus on relaxing and, eating properly and stuff. What's funny is both my pregnancies, I lost weight. I, I I didn't end up eating. It was very strange the way my hormones changed when I was pregnant. I was able to eat in moderation all of a sudden. And I mean, part of it's from being sick, from being pregnant, but all of a sudden I was able to eat in moderation. It's something I've tried to describe to my doctors, and they don't uh, they understand what I'm saying, but I don't think they believe in the reason that I believe that it is why it is. And it's that my hormones are changing because, I'm not, the things that are driving the PCOS, are different than the hormones that are driving pregnancy. And so it was funny. I was able to I'll eat a cracker or two, and like, it was fine, and both my pregnancies, I lost a lot of weight initially and gained only a little bit. And in both my pregnancies, I was at a lower weight than I was before I got pregnant. It's really strange, but I really think it all had to do with just the different hormones that were driving my body at the time. And so, anyway, at 22 weeks pregnant, I found out that my baby had growth restriction. So the placenta was not working as well as it should. And so she was not growing as fast as she should. And so it was concerning. They were keeping a close eye on me, but we were just proceeding along. And then at 30 weeks, I basically woke up with I had come home from work. I laid down to take a nap. And when I woke up, I had the worst headache I'd ever had in my entire life. And I've never had a migraine, but it's what I would imagine a migraine felt like. It was the worst pain that I had ever felt in my life. And I was very concerned. So because they had told me to watch out for that sort of thing. So I called the hospital and they were like, you need to come in right away. So I did. And they found protein in my urine. And had edema in my legs. And I had what they call preeclampsia. And it was early onset preeclampsia, which is worse, and it was with severe features, which is even worse. My blood pressure was, as high as you could imagine. 160 over 120. It was, it was the stuff that, nightmares are made of, really. And so they told me that I was going to have to stay in the hospital until my baby was born. And, I was 30 weeks. Babies are typically, born between 37 and 40 weeks. So I had a long trip in front of me. Um, and so it was so severe and the headache did not go away. And that was very concerning to them. Preeclampsia, just as a quick overview, it's this new onset blood pressure. It's got to be over 160 and over 110. Your organs are basically not functioning correctly, your placenta in particular, but other organs like your liver can be just not functioning as well. You get the protein in your urine, it has to do with liver enzymes. And the worst thing is the headache and the visual symptoms. So I was also getting this thing was like very cloudy vision, I could not see very well. Essentially what one of the doctors explained to me is like, you're having a widespread inflammation in your body. Your body isn't your placenta is sending out these uh, basically sending out these signals to your body that are saying something's not right, and your whole body is inflamed. And that makes sense with the headache and with the edema and all of those things. And so it's really, really dangerous. People in the 1920s, they died. Their babies died. They died. There weren't, they didn't have the medical things necessary to save people's lives from this. And so I'm she was I consider both of my babies to be miracle babies, right? But she was my this miracle baby was like a medical miracle for me, because without their intervention, we both wouldn't be here. So I ended up having to get a C-section at 34 weeks. Because of the growth restriction, my baby was 3 pounds, 5 ounces. So very, very tiny baby. And she spent 2 weeks in the NICU. We brought her home at 4 pounds. So she was just this tiny little thing, but she did so well. She had some feeding issues just being so small. So I couldn't breastfeed her, and I had to exclusively pump for a year, which was very difficult. And so I really wanted to find out what happened to me. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand what was the root cause of preeclampsia, and no one could really explain it to me. So I did a lot of research on my own. I'm a teacher, so it's in my bones to just learn and research and figure things out. These are things that are very important to me. And so I actually found out after the fact that being overweight, having PCOS, and having insulin resistance are all risk factors for preeclampsia. And I was really angry about that because no one had ever told me that my PCOS could be a risk factor. It's not a causality, but it's a risk factor. And nobody ever told me that. And that made me very angry because knowing what I know now, there's probably a lot that I could have done about my PCOS, my being overweight. I would have done a lot of things before I decided to get pregnant. I thought PCOS was just, oh, it's going to be hard to get pregnant, right? I didn't realize that it was a risk factor for certain, pregnancy complications. And same with being obese, or I mean, I was never over, a 30 BMI, but I was overweight, and the insulin resistance, which is related to PCOS. These are all risk factors. So, um, you know, and it's this inflammatory response too. So now knowing what I know about carnivore, and thinking back to what I knew about keto, it really is a healing diet in some ways, and a lot of times it's for things that are inflammatory. And so I'm not saying that it would have prevented me from getting preeclampsia. I don't know that, and probably not, but I at least would have liked to have that knowledge, so that I would have been able to make that decision and see if that would be something that would have helped me, or at least address my PCOS as much as I could before I got pregnant. So I kind of confirmed all of this with my high risk OBGYN before having my second baby, because I wanted to make sure I knew everything I could know, and be as prepared as possible. I wanted to have one more baby, and it was a tough decision between my husband and I whether we wanted to, because the risk of getting preeclampsia another time is about 33%. So we knew that there were chances that it could happen again, and we decided we were going to go through it, but we're through with it. But I was going to do everything that I could to try to make it better. So I knew I wanted to get my weight down as much as I could and get a handle on my PCOS if I could. And I knew, losing weight would be one of those things. So, um, I got back on keto. And so, and I was more strict with it this time. I was making sure, that I was under 20 net carbs, and I cut out dairy. And I thought that would just help with calories and just help me lose some weight. So that's what I was doing. And so we figured, okay, it'll probably take us another year to get pregnant again. And this is why I call my second baby my natural miracle baby, because on the very first try, we got pregnant. So, I was shocked at the time, right? I was like, this is crazy. There's no way. Bless you, I had all of these things going on, the PCOS, everything. Like, I can't believe naturally the very first try we got pregnant, and we were not expecting that. Now my kids are 17 months apart. It's crazy. We were never planning on that. Of course, now I'm not shocked, because now that I know what I know about ketosis, it totally makes sense. My cycles must have regulated more. I was able to bring my weight down. My insulin resistance was probably much better. And, my body had just gotten into, a better rhythm with my hormones. And so, of course, I was able to get pregnant quickly. And so that's something that was like, after I learned everything I learned about ketosis and about carnivore, I was like, duh, like that's why I got pregnant so quickly. And so I tried to stay on keto throughout the pregnancy. It didn't work out so well. My stomach just was not feeling it. Eggs are my favorite things in the world. Love them. And for some reason, I could not tolerate them when I was pregnant. So I didn't want much, and so I still got preeclampsia, but I got preeclampsia after 37 weeks, so now it was considered late onset. And so at that point, all you have to do is just deliver your baby and your preeclampsia goes away because the problems all have to do with the placenta. So as soon as the placenta is gone, all your problems with preeclampsia typically go away. So we were just able to deliver, healthy baby at 6 weeks or at 6 pounds, and it was perfect. So um, after after my second baby, my main goal was just to work on my weight. And so in 2024, I started going to the gym. I got a trainer, and I was back on keto, and I lost about 20 pounds. But the dirty keto trap found me again. I was eating those net carb tortillas and peanut butter, and like, oh, this is 2 tablespoons.
That dirty keto trap has about a 99% success rate.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
caught me so many times.
it'll get you every time. And you think you're doing the right thing for yourself, and it's just like a very slippery slope. Like for me, it would, in this particular time, it was like, okay, I'm on the keto, I'm doing my thing, I'm doing great. Okay, I'm gonna have some nuts. Okay, I'm gonna have some more nuts. Ooh, I'm gonna take these almonds and I'm gonna roast them, and I'm gonna put some soy sauce on them, and they're gonna be so good. So I made some tamari, soy sauce almonds, and I was just eating those things like candy, right? So yes, nuts are lower in carbs, but when you're eating that amount of them, they're not. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, and so I'm doing that. So then it turns into the keto bread and the keto the keto tortillas, and it's just all my trigger foods coming back again. And we had some issues with money. I had to stop going to the gym, and around that same time, I just fell off of keto, and um, and my low point was and I don't know if you know about crumble cookies where you're from, but
I've watched a YouTube video about them. Yeah, yeah.
they're diabolical. They're diabolical. The things are like this big, okay, and they're covered in frosting. My husband hates them. He thinks they're so sugary and disgusting. But for some reason, I should probably feel that way too, but when I'm in that mode of just give me carbs, give me sugar, I think it tastes great. And I'll eat thousands of calories. So I was door dashing those to my house, just those, without any other food, just cookies. And I was eating the cookies. And my husband would eat like half of one, and my kids would share half of one, but I was eating the other three because they come in a pack of four typically. And that's thousands and thousands of calories. So I was racking up those pounds real quick. And it felt like a trap. Like I was just trapped. I really felt like my cravings had control over me. I did not feel like I could control it at all. And so I was in a pretty desperate state, and I felt like it was an addiction and I needed to do something about it. And of course, the GLP-1 agonists had been out for a bit, and I thought that's my solution. I was like, that'll help because they give those to people with diabetes. And I know I have insulin resistance related to this PCOS. So I'm like, that's my ticket. That's the thing that's going to help me, break this addiction and get better. Of course, now I'm so glad I didn't do that because I see people, this I see someone that, they eat barely 500 calories and it's like a croissant. It's like it's not even, you're not actually getting the nutrition that you might need to, and I've just seen some videos from doctors explaining how they work and how the food sits in your stomach for so long, and just it's not the right way for me. I believe that it's a great tool for.
It's a little bit sad when you watch TV now, or you see these Hollywood stars, and they all look like they've had the wind taken out of them. It's
Oh yeah. So like no muscle and just like very sallow face. And I don't want to I don't want to feel like that. And like, who cares how you look, but like, I don't want to feel how that must feel, to just feel sort of, yeah, like you said, the wind's taken out of you. So I'm glad I didn't end up getting on them. But at the time, I'm like, this is my only option. This is, otherwise I'm just going to keep losing weight until I die, because I can't control this insatiable need to eat carbs and sugar. Um, and so I went to see my OBGYN because, first of all, we have a very good relationship because of what I've been through with my pregnancies. And because I felt that this insulin resistance is very much tied to my PCOS. And I thought maybe she would be a good person to talk to because, she understands PCOS and she can kind of, be on the same page with you. Well, she said, I don't prescribe obesity drugs, which I found a little bit offensive, but I was like, okay, that's fine. But she said, I'll order some labs for you and you can have your primary doc, take a look at it. She also, because I kind of broke down to her in this meeting and I said, this is my problem. I can't just have one Oreo. I got to eat the whole sleeve. I can't just have one bite of ice cream. I'm going to eat the whole pint or quart. I mean, I was eating a quart of ice cream, which for people in Europe probably doesn't make any sense. But quart, such a
It's all right. It has a feeling of big anyway. So
anyway, it was a lot. It was a lot of ice cream, too much ice cream. Um, and so I was breaking down to her, telling her all these things. I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself. I can't control it. And so she suggested a plant-based diet and yeah. And she also told me in the nicest way possible, but she told me I'd probably always, because of PCOS, probably always have this addiction. I mean, I'm calling it an addiction. I'm not trying to belittle people who, have these true, alcohol, drugs. I realize it's a way different thing, but in terms of it, it's affecting my life. I can't control it. In that way, I feel like it's dependence, right? And so she said, you're probably always going to feel that way. And you're probably always going to struggle with carbs and diet and weight, which I think she meant to tell me. I think she meant it in an empathetic way, like, um, it's okay, you're not alone type of thing. Like this happens with people with PCOS, but it didn't make me feel better. I especially because she wasn't willing to give me the drugs that I wanted right at the time. And so anyway, so but she ordered the labs for me. And so I had actually never met my primary doctor because it's one of those things where you can sign up on the computer when you first get registered with whatever insurance. So I'd never met her before. And I'd also, so I'd had her on my, on my roster for, maybe 4 years, but I'd been through pregnancies and PCOS stuff. And so I'd only ever seen my OBGYN. So my labs come back and my primary doctor, who I'd never met before again, wrote me an email that my 220 LDL was way too high and that I needed to go on statins right away. She wanted to prescribe them to me. And I was so pissed because first of all, I don't know you. Like, we have never met in person. You've never taken a family history from me. You've never looked in my eyes and, spoken to me before. Like, how do you think that it's okay to be prescribing me something without even getting to know me? And I really felt like a number. And it's what I think that moment is what ultimately led me to carnivore, because I was just kind of fed up with doctors and I didn't really think they had the answers anymore. Because if you're going to just give me a prescription based off of a number and not even want to meet me in person to talk about it, we have a problem. That's not the way that this should be done. I mean, why don't we talk about lifestyle? Like, you don't even want to sit down with me and talk about your plant-based diet you want me to do, like, like, let's at least have a conversation about it.
so
So
it's the skeptical me would say it's much more cost effective to knock out 5 emails to 5 patients than actually sit down with someone.
Yep. So I tried to be nice and I replied to her saying, I really don't feel comfortable with you prescribing me a statin without knowing me. I'm also 33, so maybe let's just try some other things before we, go to medication. I don't, I'm not going to take a medication unless I absolutely have to, right? Um, so I insisted on an in-person meeting, and I was also really more concerned about my insulin resistance. And I thought, well, I'll talk to her about the GLP-1s too. I ended up having to do a HOMA IR, which is a calculation for insulin resistance on myself because my OBGYN claimed that it was only used in research settings. So, they pretty much only use the HbA1c, and they don't use any sort of measure of insulin resistance. And because my HbA1c was only 5.3, they thought that, oh, you're fine, again, treating me like a number, right? So I did my own HOMA IR a score on myself, and I brought that, and it showed that I did, have insulin resistance, and so I brought that with me to the meeting. I needed some evidence for myself. And it's a pretty typical, primary doctor conversation. She lectured me about my cholesterol. She showed me a nice little chart showing my cholesterol going up over the years. She told me keto was very bad for me and told me to stay away from fat and carbs. And she even told me to stay away from avocados, which I thought was weird. Um, and because, I think most people would, the Mediterranean diet is now considered, even by, you know, mainstream doctors and stuff, to be a healthy diet. And there's avocados and avocado oil and olive oil and stuff in that diet. So I thought that was weird. She said, if I do eat meat, to eat a very small amount and to make it lean meat, and with lots of vegetables. She said, just tons of vegetables. And so I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, I'm going to go home and do the opposite of what you're telling me, because I just know what I've tried this. Like, I know what you're telling me is not going to help me. So I refused the statins, and I told her, give me 6 months. And so this was about 4 months ago. I said, give me 6 months. I'm going to make some lifestyle changes and I'll come back. We'll do some labs again, and then we can go from there. And I will talk to you about a statin. Um, and I did ask about the GLP-1 agonists, but the way my hospital system works, that since my BMI was only 30, in order to give them to people without diabetes, my hospital network basically requires a BMI of 40 or more, which is insane to me because yeah. So anyway, she basically told me, go get them online because they're going to be cheaper anyway. And you can just lie, or you can do whatever you need to do to get them. Like, you shouldn't have a problem. But she basically told me, like, I'm never going to be able to prescribe that to you. So just, obviously I wasn't going to go home and get fatter just so I could get on the medications. So that was off the table at that point. And I'm glad because, what I learned about the side effects, was concerning. And so I get home from the appointment and I go straight to YouTube. I'm like, all right, I'm going to be a YouTube doctor now. And I just looked up, natural ways to lower LDL. And I looked at some videos, but one of the things I landed on was Dr. Philip Ovadia's channel, and he was talking about insulin resistance being a much bigger risk factor for heart disease than LDL. And I'm like, I knew it. That's why I went in there. I'm very concerned about my insulin resistance. And I had also watched things like Fat, a documentary. I knew about Nina Teicholz and stuff like that. So I already knew that fat was not bad for me, and that this whole myth around saturated fat. I knew about that already. And so it all sort of started falling into place. And both of my parents have heart issues, and so I knew that I needed to act fast. I mean, I wanted to solve this problem and show my doctors that I can make progress, even if it's not the progress that they are exactly looking for. So I read Dr. Ovadia's book, and I realized, and one of the diets he talks about there in there is carnivore, and I realized if low carb is going to help me with insulin resistance, zero carb is going to be even better, right? And so I started watching and following, everybody, all of our favorite carnivore doctors, and learning everything I possibly could. Like I said, I just soak up information. I mean, that's what I like to do. So, and so I wanted to start a little slower. So I started on ketovore first. So basically I was eating like, some lettuce wraps with my meat and some onions, like that kind of thing. And then I started my 90 days of carnivore on August 2nd of this year. And so at first it was just going to be, so I'm 4 days away from 90 days. First I thought it was going to be a 90-day thing, and I just leave it at that. I wanted to get control of my weight, my insulin resistance, and my carb and my sugar addiction. But I really didn't anticipate all the other benefits. And I didn't, I hadn't watched, before I started, I hadn't watched any of the guests on your channel yet. And that, has kept, like you said, it keeps me motivated to keep going. And it also it's remarkable to me. The most recent one I can think of is Fumi talking about her endometriosis and her PCOS, and I was like, this is what we need. We need more people talking about women's health and how it can be helped by carnivore, because it is remarkable. And so she just, I mean, I get shivers just thinking about that interview, because she was just amazing. And I don't remember her name, but the woman who had a child, and she was feeding her child through a G tube with liver and with bone broth and all this stuff, and how I mean, that was so inspiring to me. And it was all these stories that showed me that this is not a diet. This is a therapy. This is a way to drastically change your life in so many ways. And so I'm, like I said, I'm a few days away from 90 days. I've lost 34 pounds. I've lost 5 inches off my belly. And unlike keto, I have not plateaued. I have stayed steady the entire time. It's remarkable, because I've just never found weight loss to be so simple. My cravings are gone. I mean, those were gone, like most people, within a week or two. My addictive sort of sugar habits, gone. And unlike keto, they have not crept back in, little mysterious ways, little sneaky ways. The food noise, like everybody talks about with GLP-1s, turn off the food noise. Well, so does carnivore, big time. Like, food noise is gone. Like, I really enjoy what I eat, but I do just feel like it's fuel now. Like, it's just fuel for my body that keeps me going. And it's not something I think about around the clock like before. And my dad's a chef. So like, I am somebody who came from eating delicious, wonderful foods of all different types. But I don't miss it. I really don't. My cycles have totally regulated. So in the last 2 cycles I had have been totally normal, and they're not as heavy as before. And
So
I'm
sorry to interrupt, but is this the first time in your life that you're feeling like it is normal?
my cycles.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah.
That 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 says a lot.
I'm having every 30-day, like like a normal woman who doesn't have PCOS. I'm having every 30-day cycles, which is, yes, for me, never had that before. And it's kind of annoying, actually, because I'm like, well, I thought I had more time, but it's okay, it's good, it's a sign of health, so I'm happy. Um and I'm still holding out hope that with enough time, like, the one of the more annoying symptoms, which is the hair growth, with enough time, my body will have time to work on that. That is something I read can take Like I've asked that in a few of the communities, community chats and stuff in carnivore, and people say that can be over a year. Those some of those more pesky hormonal symptoms can take a while. So I'm holding out hope for that one. I still have some acne here and there. But I think that's because I'm still eating dairy. I just can't. I can't. Dairy is just something that it's like, it's just my little thing on top. It's not a lot. I'm like the majority of my, but it's like Bella, she just loves her cheese and butter, and I'm the same way. So I think that might have something to do with the acne. But it's not a lot. I mean, it's very little. Um, and there's weird stuff I didn't expect. Like, I had this really bad sty on my eye, and I had it for maybe 2 or 3 years, through 2 or 3 months before I started carnivore, and it went away within like a week or two. Like it was gone. And I'm sleeping so much better. I mean, both quantitatively and qualitatively. Like I feel better. I feel more energized in the morning. I feel like I'm getting better sleep. But then also, like, I have my watch on when I'm sleeping. I'm getting 2 to 3 times more deep sleep than I was getting before, because I've been wearing it for a while, so I was able to look at before and after. I also my resting heart rate average has gone down by 10 beats per minute, which Sean Baker has said that happens, with people who do carnivore. And I just think that's, another sign of health, so it's now 54 beats per minute. And I have no desire for alcohol anymore. I know you've talked about this too. Like I used to be the kind of person who 2 to 3 days a week, I would come home and I just want to have a couple glasses of wine to just like chill out. And now I don't want it. Like I took a couple sips, a few times throughout the 90 days, and I was like, nah, it just like doesn't, it's weird. It's just like I got this dopamine detox, and now I'm just like, don't really need it. Maybe I'll have it on special occasions or whatever, but I just don't really need it. And people have told me that my skin and my nails and my hair look really healthy. I've definitely noticed the hair and the nails. Like my nails are not like, my nails used to be the kind of nails that like just every time I would, and I'm a stay-at-home mom right now. And so I'm grabbing stuff, I'm picking stuff off the floor. I'm always working with my nails, and they're like, they're not breaking, which is just crazy. I contribute that to the bone broth. I try to do bone broth a couple times a week and just get the collagen. And I think that's helping. I don't take any supplements, but yeah, I think it's helping. And I have had rosacea on my upper arms since before I could remember. And people will always come up and say, oh, did you get sunburn on your arms? I'm like, no, it's just rosacea. And it's mild. It's not, some people have much more severe cases, but it's gone down considerably. I would say it's probably 80% better than it was. So, yeah, I'm experiencing so much healing. And the 90 days is coming up, but I'm just going to keep going. 34 pounds in 90 days is pretty darn good, I think. And bless you. And I think, for somebody who only probably has 50 pounds to lose, I mean, that's, it's just showing how simple and, steady it can be. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
great.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Um,
they
so how have you been eating these last 90 days?
So I started out with, okay, I'm just going to eat when I'm hungry, and I'll just, see how that goes. And then it slowly went to, okay, well, I'm not really hungry except for like 2 days of, two times a day. So then it was 2 meals a day. And I found myself just not really wanting dinner. And so I just dropped dinner. And so now I'm actually OMAD, and I've been OMAD for probably the last 2 months. And I know that that's something that's controversial with some people, especially some people say that women should not do it, but I'm just trying to listen to my body, and I'm just not hungry all day long. I'm hungry once a day. I get true stomach grumbling hunger. I eat until I'm full. I don't, I'm not counting calories. I'm not doing anything. So I'll typically eat I don't know how beef prices are where you are, but they have gone way up. I live in California and it is insane. So I stick with typically ground beef or some of the, the cheaper cuts. Like today I had a couple hamburger patties that I made with a little bit of raw cheese on top. I'll do a bone broth soup once a week. So I'll heat up, a good portion of bone broth, and I'll have, I'll do flour, eggs in there, and chicken. I like to roast a chicken, every week or so. I like to change it up. So like I'll make bacon wrapped shrimp, I'll make salmon. We like all the meat here, my husband and I, so I'll make a little bit of everything. I really am into, doing a slow cooked meat once a week or so, like a chuck roast that you just slow cook, and that's really good with some sour cream. And always eggs. I pretty much make eggs with every single meal. It's my favorite food. I love it. It's just the perfect balance of fat and protein, and yeah, that's typically it. I really do like to change it up. I'm not one of those people who likes to eat the same exact thing every
Mm.
single day. Plus, I have a family to cook for. Being a stay-at-home mom, I cook for my husband and I cook for my kids. So they like some variety. So I try to just see what's on sale and cook it up. And I finally got a food saver, so I've been marinating meat. I still do spices. So I've been marinating meat, putting that in the freezer, and then anytime we need a steak, just grab it. So,
Mm.
uh, yeah.
So, what does your husband think of this? I mean, he must notice a difference in you.
Oh, yeah, of course. He's on the journey with me, actually. So he wasn't at first. But he's very supportive. He's probably started about 6 weeks ago. He started. He's lost 11 pounds himself. It's a little bit, it's a little bit slower for him because he is somebody he kind of just needs to eat throughout the day. So he just sort of eats when he's hungry. But yeah, he's gotten on the carnivore kick with me too. Occasionally he'll have a work dinner or whatever, and he'll be like, "Oh, I ate some salad." I'm like, "Yeah, it's fine. You can eat some salad sometimes." But it's very nice to have the support. He's very supportive of me, and my children are very low carb. I've always believed, and I see it in my kids. I see the same carb thing with my kids as I know I have. So I'm very careful. Um, you know, like Nisha Berry said, like I hope they don't grow up wanting craving carbs. I want them to crave meat. And so I try to keep them pretty much on the same thing, except for I'll give them a fruit or a vegetable at every meal as well. But we don't have any rice in the house. We don't have any bread. It makes it easier for me, because we just don't have anything in the house that would really take me off the path. So, and my mom just decided to start her 90 days 2 days ago. So I finally convinced her, which I'm very excited about. My dad has always been like, "Oh yeah, fasting's the thing," and meat. He loves meat, and he's like, but he's a chef, so he's always tasting stuff. So he says he says he wants to do it, but it's also like he's tasting all the time and stuff.
I
But
was gonna say, like, a lot of this kind of does go back to your dad, though, how he introduced you to Atkins, because I feel like once you've experienced what being low carb can do for your body, like, that kinda stays in the back of your mind all your life, and that's why you keep retrying keto and whatever, and why you eventually find carnivore, and you're less skeptical about giving it a try, right?
exactly, I love that too because yes, we know that low carb works, right? But the great thing about carnivore is it is low carb and no carb, and it works, but it's way easier to stick to because you don't have to count anything. You don't have to count macros. You don't, it's like you see these fitness influencer people and they look amazing and I'm sure they feel amazing, but you got to count these macros and you got to do this and you got to make sure you get creatine and you got to do all these things. And it's just like, It's like that must be exhausting. For me personally, I can't stick to that. And so that's what I love about carnivore. It's just so simple to stick to. And um, you know, I just urge people to think about something that's, simple for you. I mean, I think, a lot of times people go, "Oh, I'm going to have to count calories." I can't do that, you know? And it's like, well, you don't have to, and knowing that is like such an empowering thing, knowing that there's something where you can just listen to your body, listen to your satiety hormones, and just truly listen to what your body needs and wants. It's amazing. And there is such a huge community of people who are so supportive. So funny. Um, I love the community because you talk about things like carnivore calm and the things that just like everybody in the community is so kind, and nobody's telling you, oh, you're doing it wrong, or like I just like, you don't get like, it's weird because in some of the diet culture, right, you go, oh, you can't do that, you can't do that. But like in the carnivore community, people are really supportive. I mean, there was somebody in a it was a YouTube live, and she was plant-based, and she's like, I think I want to try carnivore, but I don't know. And everybody was just so supportive, and nobody was like, oh, you're a plant-based person. Everybody was just like, try it, try 20% and just see how it goes, and I think a lot of that comes from just the mental part of um what it does for you, how it just calms your mind. My husband was talking about, he's like, it's weird, like I was having all this work anxiety and just really stressed about work, and I've just been feeling kind of like better lately. I'm like, yeah, you got the carnivore calm, man. I was so excited for him. And so um just to have something that's simple to stick to, that makes you feel good, that you can find lots of people who will support you. I mean, there's just really nothing better than that. And for anybody, um, especially for any woman who is um, experiencing PCOS related infertility, I mean, what do you have to lose? You've tried everything else. I know I did. And it's like, if it's PCOS, I can't speak to all infertility, but if it's PCOS related, just give this a try. Your PCOS is related to insulin resistance. Not eating carbs drives down your insulin resistance and makes you more sensitive. So you might as well just give it a try. Give it the 90 days and just see what happens, because I mean, you could be pregnant. You could. I'm not saying it's a for sure, but I mean, what have you got to lose? Give it a try.
Yeah, I think that's a very important piece of advice as well. The last thing you said there, like, what have you got to lose?
Yeah,
It's not like making the decision to give this a try for 90 days is like you're going to have to stick to it for the rest of your life. Give it a try and see
exactly.
if it works. And,
Exactly.
if you don't feel good, just go back to the way you were eating before.
The funny thing is, you always feel good.
Right. There's, I think when
The funny
you go on it for 90 days, there's very few people gonna go, "No, I don't like this feeling good crap. I'm gonna go
it's
back to
losing weight.
this sucks. I look different every time I look in the mirror."
I know. I have to get a whole new wardrobe. It's crazy. I threw away all my skinny clothes, because I like basically gave up, right? And now I'm gonna have to buy all new clothes. I mean, it's a good problem to have, but it is. It's just it's transformative. It really
Yeah.
is.
So, Aisha, if people wanna reach out to you, how can they get in contact?
Well, my YouTube is Faust Fuels on the screen. I haven't posted anything on there. I'm not really a social media person, but I decided to start a channel just in case I wanted to, post anything. And then also my email is just Ayesha M Faust at Gmail. And yeah, I'm happy to talk to anybody who just wants to say, hey, how'd you do this?
No worries. I'll include your YouTube and email in the show notes.
That's
Aisha,
great.
thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.